Thanks a million, Kate. Hello there, everybody. How are you? And welcome to this session on improving Kafka monitoring with native Prometheus Metrics Reporter. It's really great to be here, and it's great to see so many people that have tuned in. So once again, thanks to everybody who's joined these sessions. This is a very high-level presentation, so we won't be going too far into the weeds. Just a bit of background. My name, as Kate said, is Owen Corrigan. I am a software engineer at Red Hat, having joined in 2022 after a career change. So I've only been really contributing to Strimzi or working my way to contributing to Strimzi since joining, but I really enjoy the process. Two of my colleagues, as Kate mentioned, are here with me that will present later on. So Federico Valeri, he's kind of been integral with the integration of the metrics reporter into Strimzi, working with me along that. And then Mickael Maison, who was really integral on the design and development of the metrics reporter through its first couple of iterations. So they'll join in a few minutes and go through some of the later slides regarding future development, etc. Okay, so why we're here and why we have the Strimzi metrics reporter, why monitoring matters. So metrics are raw data about the system state that are critical for monitoring and performance tuning. I suppose really monitoring provides the ability for proactive detection and potential issues in a system, and would be essential for capacity planning, making sure that your system has enough resources to handle current and even future demand, and really gives a kind of a guide to good decision making around how your system works in production. If you think about really, if you have a system in production and you've no monitoring, you've no metrics, similar to the OpenTelemetry presentation earlier, you want to be able to see your system and how it's operating. Without that feedback, you're kind of flying blind. You can't tell if your system is in any trouble, if anything's broken, and if there is something not working, how to go about fixing it. So I suppose at a high level, monitoring and metrics are vital for any kind of production system. And when we talk about metrics here, we're really talking about metrics typically in the Prometheus format. Why Prometheus? Well, as probably a lot of you know, Prometheus is standardized, it's efficient, and it's very widely supported. And at the end of that endpoint, then we get raw metrics. And I suppose metrics really, they're just lines of data without a useful way to view or interpret them. By themselves, they might be technically useful, but not so much necessarily human friendly to view. So we have systems like Grafana, and that provides nice dashboards that make raw metrics user friendly and usable. So really what we're saying is we can look at real-time data using charts, graphs, and tables in a much more user-friendly and UI-friendly way. That's really what we want at the end of the day. So looking at Kafka metrics in particular, well, there are thousands of Kafka metrics really, and they at runtime, and they can be exposed by the built-in JMX exporter. And I mean, like realistically, we could have metrics covering broker health, topic performance, producer consumer stats, replication and partition status, or disk and network I/O. So across the whole gambit of functionality within Kafka, there are metrics for us to be able to see how the system is working as a whole. Looking at throughput, we could talk about how much data Kafka is handling over time, or latency. Another important one, how long it takes Kafka to process requests, like how long a producer waits for an acknowledgement or something like that. So if there's creaking or lagging in your system, you need to know about it. And likewise, then I have replication written there as well. Kafka is it's renowned for being fault tolerant, and replication issues are vital for this fault tolerance. If, for instance, there's an under-replicated partition or something, a broker could be down, or So it's good to get that feedback and to be able to instantly remedy the situation. One other thing I think is important really is kind of understanding the Kafka metrics pipeline and how to tweak it or how to change it. So if you're looking for some kind of metrics, and you're filtering, how to be able to use your Grafana dashboards to view that and to utilize it as best as you can. And luckily enough, Strimzi, it provides some example Grafana dashboards for us, and they're very usable out of the box. So speaking of Strimzi, so this is how really we monitor metrics today. I mentioned JMX, and Prometheus doesn't natively understand JMX. So we currently use a JMX exporter. And this is a tool that converts any Java application metrics exposed via JMX into Prometheus compatible format. And the Java application in our case would be Kafka. So basically, the JMX exporter translates JMX metrics into Prometheus format. One thing I think that might be worth pointing out on the diagram is Kafka uses two different types of metrics. So we have Kafka common metrics, which creates Kafka metrics on the client side and common metrics on the server side. And then we also have Yammer metrics, which creates Yammer metrics on the broker side. So I just thought that was probably worth pointing out. So look, JMX exporter, it's a battle-tested tool. It's been used for a good while now, and the thing is, it's generic, so it can be helpful, but it also has some pain points, and with some trade-offs and requirements. So as you can see by the diagram here, we have the metrics reporter first exposing metrics via JMX before using a JMX exporter agent to expose them again via HTTP. So, I think this could be simplified, and we'll see in a while how that happens. Also, I mentioned that Kafka could have thousands of metrics, and the Java agent JMX exporter collects all of these thousands of metrics, and then it gives us the ones we want. So in other words, filtering happens after the metrics are collected. So collects thousands of metrics, you want to filter for one or two. Obviously, this is not ideal for optimal performance. This could slow down your system. And as I said, it's not optimal. Also, then there are some complex mapping rules. So the JMX exporter allows us to rename metrics. And this can make it hard to investigate issues if a user has renamed some metrics. So like, say, for instance, if renaming isn't standardized across teams or environments, they could look completely different in a development environment versus production, causing confusion, or maybe dashboard or alerts relying on default names could break silently if the naming rules changed. So that's something that you could look out for. So what did we decide to do? We decided to write our own Strimzi metrics reporter, and this is using Kafka's native metrics reporter interface. So like all of the new features within Strimzi, this kind of started as a proposal upstream in the community by Mickael. So it went through all the rigors of proposal, then reviews, then PR being merged, then obviously then coming up with a proof of concept. And once that proof of concept was deemed to be working and good, then we had the first iteration of the metrics reporter 0.1.0, and then we've since had a second release. So it is early access, but the one thing to point out is it's usable at the moment currently with all Kafka clients, which is great. And another thing then to point out is that the metrics reporter is its own project. So it can be used as a Kafka plugin in any Kafka system, not strictly for Strimzi. So it is a project on its own as a Kafka plugin. But we decided, we built it, so we decided to integrate it with Strimzi. And there are some benefits to that. So let's have a look at some of them. And maybe if you look at the diagram, so there's no JVM agent, no JMX. So this kind of simplifies the whole process. We are directly exposing metrics via the HTTP endpoint in the Prometheus format. So that removes the JMX agent, or the JMX exporter, as I said. We also filter as early as possible. So this means we're kind of filtering on the way in. So we're not collecting all of the metrics and then looking for specific ones. We are filtering as early as possible, and obviously then that increases time, relatively speaking, and decreases overhead or workload. And we have also simplified configuration. So let's have a look. So the cluster operator integration itself. So the metrics config, we've added a new type to the API, and you can see there the type is Strimzi Metrics Reporter. Strimzi simplifies the configuration for the user, so you can actually switch back and forth between the metrics reporter and the JMX exporter by using type. Now you can't use both at the same time, so it's one or the other. But as I said, so we've added this new Strimzi Metrics Reporter to the API, and we've added one config to this, and that is we can filter metrics through regular expressions in the allow list. So we have a values field, and in that values field, you can see the allow list. Excuse me. Now, in the metrics reporter itself, by default, all of the metrics are allowed. So we've decided to make Strimzi opinionated and have a sensible default list in that allow list. And we'll see these shortly when I run the demo. But this is basically, we've given the default metrics that we think are useful for the user. Now, this is configurable. So as I said, if you don't specify anything in the allow list, if you just have type as Strimzi Metrics Reporter, you will get this default allow list. But if there is something that you want to filter yourself, you can add it here. So basically, the metrics reporter has a bunch of configs, but Strimzi only wants to know which configs you want through the allow list. And as I said, each component comes with a default. So I'm going to just quickly run the demo, and there's only 3 or 4 minutes, so just to see it in operation. 1 second. Okay, so as you can see, I've actually recorded this video because, to roll some of the brokers and controllers, that would obviously take a couple of minutes. So this will speed up the process. So as you can see, I have my Kafka cluster here in my Minikube instance under the My Project namespace. And if I go in and look at the Kafka custom resource under my cluster, you can see that we do not have any metrics config. So I'm going to add this now at the Kafka spec level. Okay, so once we save this, then our pods will start to roll. As you can see here, so this kind of takes 10 to 20 seconds per pod. So once I've demonstrated that one of them is running, I've fast forwarded the video. So just as a time saving exercise. So if we go back in and look at the Kafka custom resource that we've edited, and we can see that indeed the metrics config has our type of Strimzi Metrics Reporter. So that's good. And also, if we return and look at our config map, so this is what's being passed to the brokers as configurations. If we look at the config map for one of the brokers, and we scroll down to the Strimzi Metrics Reporter configuration. So I only added Strimzi Metrics Reporter as a type, but we've gotten all of these default values. So by default, it's enabled, and our port is 9404. But you can also see in our allow list that we have this list of defaults, comma separated list of defaults. And this is the defaults that I mentioned earlier that Strimzi provides for us. And this is because obviously I didn't set any values for the allow list myself to filter. So just to demonstrate then, if we port forward our pod, so I'm port forwarding the broker on 9404, and if we hit the endpoint, we can see here we have our metrics being produced or being displayed. So now if I go back into my Kafka custom resource, and sorry, I'm kind of flying through the video, so hopefully it's not going too fast. But if we go back to our Kafka custom resource and we now decide that we want to filter, so we're going to add in the allow list just one specific metric to look for. So it's our numlog segments. And we wait for the pods to roll and for the brokers and controllers to roll and start up again, which by the magic of video has happened really quickly. And we look at our config map again. Now you can see in our Strimzi Metrics Reporter configuration that we only have, so we've basically overwritten the default values that were provided by Strimzi. And if we go back and port forward the pod again, and we check for whatever metrics that are being scraped by or displayed, we can see apart from the JVM metrics, the only Kafka metrics that are available are our Kafka numlog segments. So this is really useful if you want to drill down and if you want to, if you want to filter for specific metrics to look for, extremely useful. So look, that's the demo. I'll go back to the presentation. So before I hand over to Federico and Mickael, just where we're at with the integration. So currently our support for the brokers and controllers work is complete, and that will be a feature for the next Strimzi release, which is 047.0. I'm currently working on support for Kafka Connect and Mirror Maker 2, which I'm hoping will get into the same release. There is some work done on the HTTP bridge, and that will be the next part to try and get into a future release. And then Mickael will discuss some of the new features that will come in very shortly after in future releases. So look, thanks for listening to me. I'm going to pass over to Federico, and he's going to take you through the HTTP bridge section. So take it away there, Fede. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks, Owen. As Owen mentioned in the previous slide, so we are basically aiming to support all the different components that Strimzi provides. But the bridge was a little bit different because the bridge didn't support the ability to have different kind of metrics. So you can just enable or disable metrics with the Prometheus exporter. So we had to go and change the bridge in order to support multiple type of metrics. And you can see here from the slide, we have a new configuration, which is called bridge.metrics, in which you can specify the string for Strimzi Metrics Reporter in order to enable the new metrics type, or you can set the old way of exporting metrics with the Prometheus exporter if you want to stick with it. Of course, alongside with this new configuration, you also have the possibility to customize the allow list. This is an optional configuration, but it works the same as you have seen in the operator schema. The old way of disabling or enabling metrics in the bridge standalone is now deprecated. So if you are using this environment variable down here, then you need to just replace with the new configuration metrics. This is already available. If it happens that you are using the bridge standalone, then you can already leverage this new way of exposing metrics. And also as a bonus, with the JMX Prometheus exporter type, you also have now the possibility to set a custom configuration. Instead, before you had a hard-coded one that you can change. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we also thought to run some validation tests just to see and to confirm that our design was correct and that actually the reporter performance were good as we designed. This is not a rigorous test, just a way to confirm and validate the design. It's run on a local machine with Minikube. We have a single craft broker deployment and with default metrics configuration. So we are not doing any tuning at all, both on JMX exporter and the metrics reporter. And the system is idle, so it's not handling any traffic or there is not much data in it. So it was just very simple test. And we measured the script latency, increasing the number of exported metrics, as you can see down here in the graph. So you see that the red line is the Prometheus Metrics Reporter, and you can see that the curve is pretty flat, and it's scaled much, much better than the exporter. And that's it for me. So I will hand over to Mickael to talk to you about the new features we are targeting.
Thanks, Federico. So if we step back a bit and look at the reporter itself, so as Owen said, it's currently in early access. Basically, we've been busy focusing on getting the core functionality working and testing it. So now that we got something working, we're starting to look at building differentiating features, so features that really add value versus the JMX exporter. So because we are implementing Kafka plugin, and most Kafka plugins are reconfigurable, means metrics reporters are also reconfigurable. So this is a big feature that lets you change the yellow list of basically change the metrics you collect at runtime without restarting your brokers. So that's really useful because if you want to change metrics, you have basically currently to roll your clusters. This can take tens of minutes. So if you have an incident, maybe you may take some time to collect the data, but also sometimes, I don't know, maybe it happened to you already, you roll the cluster and the issue disappears. You're not quite sure what happened, and you don't really have the data. So being able to change the list at runtime lets you grab the data you want when you need it. So that's currently merged in the main branch of the reporter. That should be available in the next version that we hope to release in the next couple of months. So apart from that, I also have other ideas to explore. I mean, these are just ideas, so these need proposals, and obviously just open discussion so far. But here are things I'm thinking about the reporter. So one feature about Apache Kafka that's been released for a few releases already is support for KEEP 714. So basically, it's a feature that lets Kafka clients send their metrics to brokers. So far, we've only spoken about broker metrics, but the Streamzy reporter can be used with Kafka clients to collect their metrics. And it's important basically to monitor your clients as well. So you want to collect their metrics, but sometimes it can be a bit tricky because your clients are distributed, they are maybe run by different teams. So this feature that lets you send the metrics to a broker is quite helpful because that lets you centralize all the data in one place where you can easily collect and aggregate it. So what's great is that this feature is basically built into the metrics reporter API. So it's something we can add support into a reporter if we want to. So that's something I'm considering opening a proposal for in the next few weeks. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And apart from that, also thinking about regular features like support for HTTPS. So we know that in many regulated environments, you need all connections to be encrypted. So obviously exporting your metrics has to be through HTTPS as well. So those are kind of the features we're currently considering. If you have any ideas or if you have any feedback, feel free to reach out. Go to the Metrics Reporter project. You can request a feature there or vote on the feature. Tell us what you think about it. That would be really useful for us to figure out what's the roadmap for the project. So I think we hopefully given you a good overview of the new project, this Metrics Reporter, and what to expect in the future. So that's the end of our session, and I think we have 5 minutes for Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, this is a really great feature and great to see a good overview. We did have at least one question. So in Q&A, somebody asked, they said, currently JMX Exporter is running within the Kafka container. So during resource contention, we see metrics being missed. It wouldn't have been an issue if the JMX Exporter is running as a sidecar container. Is there any thoughts in this direction going forward?
I can try to answer that. So I haven't seen this reported before, but maybe, I don't know, we could consider that if you raise an issue and discuss about that. But maybe it's also an opportunity to test the new reporter and see if this is something that works better for this use case. I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, so I mean, resource contention is kind of, Owen mentioned some of the pain points, and performance was one of the reasons we started to invest alternatives. And obviously, if you were running the metrics reporter, this works in a slightly different way. So you wouldn't be Kafka fighting for resources versus something else. Basically, the reporter runs within Kafka. So that's a bit different. So hopefully with the reporter, you should have less issue in this for this type of scenarios. But apart from that, we've not really explored. I mean, at least myself, not really explored running it into a sidecar. So I'm not sure what would be the trade-offs or whether it's even possible. Yeah, but that's what I can tell you for now.
Cool. And then I can't see any more in the Q&A, but there was a question in the chat, which I know there have been a few answers under, but I wanted to give you an opportunity if there's anything you want to add. So somebody said one problem they had with the Kafka exporter metrics is that if you have too many topics, the size of the scrape page becomes too large for Prometheus to read it. And they were asking, has anyone else seen this? So there were a couple of answers around filtering and dropping some of the metrics that you don't want. But I don't know if any of you want to add anything to that.
That's precisely the reason we started this project. So yeah, the number of metrics in Kafka mostly scales versus the number of partitions you have. You roughly get a dozen to 20 metrics per partition. So partitions are those biggest factor in the number of metrics you end up in the end. And yeah, if you have clusters with a few thousand partitions, we've seen many cases where basically Prometheus times out scraping the metrics endpoint because it takes too long to generate the page, or the page is too large, it can't scrape it. And that's kind of what Federico's performance graph demonstrated, is that due to the way the exporter works, so you can tweak it. So there are tricks that you can play with the allo list parameter. And there's a allo list and a deny list values, and it's really, the allo list usually has priority in the way the exporter works. So setting that first is really a great way to squeeze a bit more performance out of it. But in the end, it's one of the things Owen touched on, is that JMX Exporter is very a generic project that can extract metrics from any Java application through JMX. So it's really not optimized for Kafka. The reporter itself is really built into Kafka. So basically, we can filter metrics as they get created. So as metrics are created, the reporter is called, and we can decide whether we're interested in that metric or not based on the allo list you've set. So very early on in the pipeline, we filter exactly what you want. So that really helps reduce the load and really caters the metrics you want. Otherwise, the JMX Exporter basically collects everything and filters what you don't want. And this can take a bit of time. And so yeah, this precise issue you hit, many people have seen it, and that's the main motivation behind creating this new project. So we would recommend you to give it a try. I mean, it's early access, so obviously take care, but try it out and see if that's helpful or not, and let us know, please.
Cool. And we're just about out of time, but I'm going to throw one more question in because we have a little bit of buffer with the coffee break. So someone asked, any thoughts on streaming metrics via OTLP over gRPC?
Yeah, so that's something we've explored. So we're using Prometheus libraries to expose the metrics. So the metrics Owen has showed you, that's human readable. If you read the endpoint manually, you get basically the text output from the metrics. But the library is able to export metrics in other formats. So you can export them as a OLTP format, as serialized as protobuf as well. So those are like typically binary format, much smaller, much more efficient for Prometheus to query as well. So you can configure your Prometheus to basically try to scrape metrics in these formats, and the reporter will handle it. So if you ask, I want to give me the metrics in serialized as protobuf, you will get that. So it's not quite streaming metrics. Still, I believe Prometheus still a periodic scrape, but I guess it covers the OLTP format you were hinting at. I mean, this may be like a future alley to explore. Like, can we basically stream metrics as they are updated or as they are created, rather than like the periodic full scrape? I don't think we're quite there yet, but that may be something that's happens in the future.
Cool. I think that is about all we've got time for, and I can't see any more questions anyway. So thank you so much, for a great session. So we have another coffee break coming up, and I believe Paolo has another question for you all.
Thanks, guys.